The year was 2052, 2 decades after the devastating collapse of World War IV. In WW4, China's quantum jamming grid had bricked the West's digital arsenals, leaving military fleets helpless, stripping Australia of its sovereignty, and forcing the United States to sign a humiliating non-aggression pact. For years, the Pacific had been quiet under Beijing's total authority. But while digital systems could be jammed, biology could not. Deep within hidden underground facilities in the Nevada desert and the deep trenches of Hawaii, US Biowarfare Command had spent 15 years perfecting Project Genesis Prime. They cultivated massive neural networks using lab-grown meat and advanced bioengineering techniques, creating living, organic wetware brains completely immune to cyberattacks, jammers, and EMPs. When World War V began, the Allied counteroffensive didn't launch with jet fighters or satellite-guided missiles. It launched with scales, claws, and raw, UN jammable instinct. Act 1. The breach of the Timor Sea. The Chinese occupation forces in northern Australia monitored the Timor Sea via the Undersea Great Wall, a dense network of quantum sensor nodes. Suddenly, their screens lit up with impossible readouts. Massive biosignatures were moving at 50 knots toward the coast. Before the garrison could deploy their digital defense grids, the sea exploded upwards. A pod of bioengineered, armored megalodons, each 60 feet long, driven by cultured meat brains programmed solely for armor-piercing kinetic strikes, cleared the water. They didn't hack the enemy's coastal sonar stations. They physically bit them off their pylons. Alongside them, giant whale leviathans acted as organic troop transports, breaching the shallows and exhaling tons of seawater before opening their massive, armored maws to drop armored marine raiding parties directly onto the beaches of Darwin. China's quantum jammers pulsed frantically, sending out millions of gigahertz of interference, but the giant bioweapons simply roared through the silent signals, incapable of being bricked. Act 2. Titans on the red dirt. With the coast secured, the US and Australian resistance forces pushed inland to liberate the vast territory lost during WW4. The outback became a battleground of terrifying contrasts. Patrolling the dusty roads were China's automated, heavily armored land drones and digital artillery batteries. Meeting them head-on was the ground arm of Genesis Prime, giant, bioengineered spinosaurs and heavily plated ankylosaurs, controlled entirely through low-tech acoustic tones and biochemical pheromone cues. Near Alice Springs, an enemy-heavy drone regiment formed a defensive line, raising its electromagnetic shields. A 4-story tall, cybernetically augmented T-Rex, its cultured brain hardwired with aggressive tactical directives, charged through the digital barrage. High-frequency jammers bounced harmlessly off its thick, bio-enhanced hide. With a deafening roar that shook the red earth, the Titan crushed the command vehicles beneath its massive feet, tearing through the metal hull plating like wet paper. The digital armies, reliant on network data loops, shattered when their physical hardware was stomped into the dirt. Act 3. Reclaiming sovereignty. Within 3 months of relentless, biological warfare, the Allied forces had swept across the continent. In Canberra, where the Occupation Command had stood for over 20 years, the final stand was brief. A swarm of bioengineered, winged Quetzalcoatlus dived out of the clouds, neutralizing radar towers and cutting off the garrison's physical supply lines. The US military and the newly reformed Australian Defence Force didn't fire a single digitized missile to reclaim the nation. They simply let loose the titans of WW5. Standing atop the ruins of the old occupation headquarters, a giant, armor-clad Spinosaurus let out a roar that echoed across the capital. For the first time in a generation, the quantum jammers went quiet, not because they were hacked, but because the biological war machines had completely swept the grid away. Australia had reclaimed its land, the Pacific was free once more, and the era of digital dominance had officially yielded to the unstoppable reign of the Titans.